From feeling they simply weren't all that good in the feature in question, to outright classing themselves as a bad actor at one stage of their career, this lot were all too happy to throw themselves and their work under the bus on these occasions. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 actors who thought they were absolutely not very good at acting. Number 10, Christina Ritchie is embarrassed by her performance in Casper. On one hand, getting to ply a trade from a young age alongside some of the strongest and most seasoned talent the business had to offer isn't the worst way to cut your teeth as a performer. But on the other, said learning of the ropes often goes down in front of a camera, meaning there's no escaping those earlier, sometimes embarrassing moments of trying to get to grips with the craft. Look no further than Christina Ricci's assessment of her early work in 1995's Casper, with the star eventually noting on WTF with Mark Maron that she thought her 13-year-old self was terrible in the childhood treasure of a flick. Going further when discussing the time she sat down with her own son to watch the child-friendly flick, Ricci couldn't help but analyse her work on a film she confessed to not trying as hard as she should have on. As she put it, I remember just thinking like, wow, that was not a believable line reading at all. No commitment, not a lot of commitment. That being said, Ricci's apparent lack of effort in the project still couldn't stop Casper from pulling in nearly $300 million at the box office. So it wasn't all bad, eh? Number 9, Tom Holland's performance was a mistake in Uncharted. You can only imagine the level of pressure Tom Holland must regularly find himself dealing with whenever he steps onto an MCU or other high-profile movie set. And it was this need to deliver a showing that made him look good and cool in his recent Uncharted adventure in particular, that resulted in a performance that the Brit was not happy about in the slightest. Confessing to being more in the mindset of land a mark, stand like this and see my bulging biceps, rather than land a mark and go through this scene at times, the Brit would also tell GQ it was a mistake and is something that I will probably never do again. At just 26 years of age, Holland still has a great deal of time to put these hard-learned lessons to good use in the coming years. So here's hoping the always entertaining Spidey star obsesses more with smashing his lines than bursting out of his t-shirt going forward. Number 8, Sam Worthington thinks he can effing act better than in Clash of the Titans. On the back of becoming something of a household name for his big blue work on James Cameron's Avatar, Sam Worthington traded AWA for the gods, as he stepped into the remake of Clash of the Titans a year later. But far from being entirely satisfied by his first outing as Perseus and the action-packed fantasy as a whole, the Australian actor was quick to admit that the cast and crew didn't deliver what some fans would have been hoping for heading into the 2010 epic. And when confessing to the entire team behind the first Titans flick being focused on improving on that initial showing throughout production on Wrath of the Titans, Worthington would take aim at his own work on Clash, stating to Movie Phone, "I can act effing better, to be honest. I'll take all the notes from people that I've been reading about on the net and give them a movie they effing want. This one I want to kind of try to satisfy a lot more people." Unfortunately for Worthington, these attempts to give fans a movie they effing want didn't work out all too well in the end, with the 2012 follow-up not quite reaching the same box office heights as Clash, and once again getting hammered by critics to the point of killing off any hopes of a trilogy. Number 7, Eddie Redmayne thought it was a pretty bad performance in Jupiter Ascending. It's not often that a star goes from arguably their greatest big screen performance to date to quite possibly their worst ever. But that's precisely the unwanted scenario Eddie Redmayne found himself in after picking up an Oscar for his work on The Theory of Everything and heading straight into a little film by the name of Jupiter Ascending. Doubling down on a bizarre raspy delivery throughout his often dialed-up performance as the villainous Balaam Abrasax, a decision informed by his character having their larynx ripped out by a wolfman, a bold choice Redmayne confessed to thinking was right at the time, eventually wound up feeling too much in retrospect, according to the actor himself when discussing the role with GQ. Not shying away from precisely how terrible he felt his work was on the sci-fi fantasy flop, the British star would also reference the fact that he came away with yet another award for his work on that lackluster follow-up to his Stephen Hawking outing, though admittedly a far less desirable one. As he put it, "I won a prize for it for the worst performance of the year, so yeah, it was a pretty bad performance by all accounts." Number 6, Ewan McGregor wasn't very good in Emma. 1996 was some year for the mighty Ewan McGregor. After becoming the name on just about every casting director's lips following on from his outstanding work as Mark Renton in Danny Boyle's legendary Trainspotting, the Scottish star stepped into the period comedy world of Emma a few months later. And while his Rent Boy display captivated the masses, McGregor's work as Frank Churchill wasn't quite as celebrated in the aftermath. While the film itself was still received warmly enough, the eventual Star Wars icon would note to Radio 1 that he was terrible in the Gwyneth Paltrow starring feature. Not stopping there, when nudged on the matter of the worst thing he's done by The Guardian, McGregor would confess to only taking the role in an effort to do something different to Trainspotting, explaining, "It's the only time I've done that and I learnt from it, you know. So I'm glad of that because it was early on and I learnt my lesson. It's a good film, Emma, but I'm just not very good in it." Number 5, Nicole Kidman wasn't proud of what she did in Australia. The film, not the place. Getting to star in a feature that literally has your homeland on the tin, alongside some of Australia's finest and under the direction of Aussie sensation Baz Luhrmann, looked like a recipe for a successful trip down under for Nicole Kidman. Only by the time 2008's Australia finally landed in theatres, the star raised in Sydney was anything but proud of the work she committed to the screen whilst playing English aristocrat Lady Sarah Ashley. As Kidman would explain to radio station 2Day FM, the star squirmed her way through the film's premiere in Sydney, confessing that she couldn't look at this movie and be proud of what I've done, and even found herself asking husband Keith Urban, "Am I any good in this movie?" And while the Moulin Rouge icon would happily celebrate the work of co-stars Hugh Jackman and Brandon Walters, Kidman was quick to note how it's just impossible for me to connect to it emotionally at all. What a damn shame. Number 4, George Clooney wasn't good in Batman and Robin. Have you found yourself wondering why George Clooney's name hasn't been floated around for a return in the Batman-boasting multiversal madness that is likely heading the DCEU's way in The Flash? Well, as the actor himself would hilariously note to Variety whilst promoting the film he directed by the name of The Tender Bar last year, when you destroy a franchise the way I did, usually they look the other way when The Flash comes by. And judging from the Ocean star's reluctance to allow his own wife to take in his Batman and Robin exploits, explaining there are certain films I just go, I want my wife to have some respect for me, it's clear Clooney is also not exactly the biggest fan of his Bruce Wayne work. This isn't the only time the Hollywood legend has taken aim at his bat nipple outing mind, with the star also confessing a few years back, "I was playing Batman and I wasn't good in it. It wasn't a good film." You can say that again. Number 3, Jonathan Lipnicki wasn't a very good actor at one point. Jonathan Lipnicki had a pretty honest assessment when it came to the spell following on from his breakout success in the likes of Stuart Little and The Little Vampire. Loves a bit of Little. For those wondering why the George Little child star seemed to disappear from our screens on the back of being a part of said Little franchise and like Mike, the actor would reveal to Slash Film that his hiatus from the business wasn't a case of simply wanting to focus on school after such a high-profile rise to fame. Instead, Lipnicki would explain that I didn't work because I just didn't work. I didn't really get any roles for a while, before declaring that it was because I wasn't a very good actor at one point. After making his first few waves in the movie business as a kid that simply didn't have any filters on him, they soon reared their head, and as the star put it, you become nervous. Sure enough, the youngster, once tipped to become a sensation for decades to come, found himself going from just doing the natural thing to trying to be like my favorite actors. Instead of calling it quits upon hitting said bumps in the road though, Lipnicki opted to take acting classes after high school and discovered a new level of love and appreciation for his craft. Attaboy! Number 2, Daniel Radcliffe wasn't happy with one particular Potter. Sticking with those young actors who had less than glowing reviews about some of their work during their formative years in the film industry, Harry Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe, simply couldn't escape the fact that he felt he fumbled one particular section in his Potter arc. As already alluded to earlier in this list, Radcliffe regularly found himself having to make the sort of mistakes other actors got to make in rehearsal rooms or at drama school in front of a camera, with some moments he's not very proud of being all on film for everyone to see, as he put it. With that in mind, watching back the 6th Potter entry, The Half-Blood Prince, turned out to be a pretty excruciating experience for the leading man, with Radcliffe admitting to Daily Mail that he's just not very good in it. On top of confessing to hating the performance he gave, the critical Brit would claim that he was very one note and that he got complacent while shooting that particular picture. But at least he wasn't entirely unsatisfied by his part in the Potter series, with Radcliffe declaring in that same interview that my best film is the 5th one, Order of the Phoenix, because I can see a progression. We all did, Dan, don't be too hard on yourself. Number 1, Anya Taylor-Joy didn't do it right in The Witch. Quickly becoming one of the most eye-catching actors in the game, on the back of her stellar performance as part of Robert Eggers' folk horror flick The Witch, it may come as something of a surprise to hear that Anya Taylor-Joy actually wasn't that impressed by her work as Thomasin in that spooky spectacle, going as far as to confess that she was devastated upon first sitting down to watch the eventually celebrated movie a few hours before its release. The soon-to-be in-demand actor admitted to feeling as though she'd never work again in the aftermath. And those feelings of I have let down the people I love most in the world, I didn't do it right, seem even more surreal given the fact that TaylorJoy would go on to pick up a ton of awards and acclaim for her breakout showing in the Eggers feature. Hopefully, the star has gotten a little more used to seeing her face that large in the years since bursting onto the scene at 18, with the sensation once again teaming with Eggers this year and absolutely excelling in her turn as Olga of the Birch Forest in The Northman. And that's our list. Know of any other actors who thought they were absolutely at acting? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of thing, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more incredible articles just like the one this video you're watching right this second is based on. I have been Mr. Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you as always for clicking on this lovely video today. Hopefully you have the best of days wherever you are in the world, but in the meantime, be good to yourself and goodbye.